Hi everybody, welcome. I hope you can see me. We are live from my honey house in Corcel, Brittany. This is my first live stream I've ever done, so I hope you can all see it. I hope everything is clear. We have a bit of an echo, so I'm going to try and speak quietly into my mic. That's because this honey room isn't completely filled out yet, and I've just reminded myself to keep it quiet so you can hear of all of us. I really wanted to be able to have lives for a long time now, but I haven't because I haven't had fiber optic and decent communication. But now we have that in place, and I'm delighted tonight to welcome my first guest. If I was to say to you, his channel is pretty well known in the UK, and his catchphrase is, we do beekeeping, farming, countryside living, and reviews as well. I'm sure you'd be very happy to join me in welcoming Gruff Rees to the show. Welcome, Griff. I hope you can hear me.
Hello, good to see you again, Rich.
Good to see you. How are you?
I'm good, very well, thank you. Busy, stressed, but getting ready for the season, like I suppose everybody else.
Yeah, well, I wanted to have you on because remember, I didn't say this before and I should have done. You kindly had me on as your first live guest. Now I'm reciprocating. Hopefully we're all both in crystal clear color vision for everybody and we can all hear, hopefully not too echoey, but we'll do our best. Anyway, I've got lots of questions for you, but what I'd like you to do is give me a little bit of introduction, tell me about yourself and where you are now and how you got where you are today. Because there are a lot of people, I think there's quite a few people on the other side of the pond watching, and it would be really good for you to give them a bit of history of how you got started.
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, and I can see that. I've seen that from the comments here. We've got Kenya, Canada. I can see literally on the other side of the world. So I'm Griff, and first of all, I like to think of myself as a bee farmer. That's the job that I enjoy doing more than anything. We produce honey and nukes in Wales, probably one of the hardest place to keep bees in the UK, but we do okay. We don't do as good as the guys across in England, honey crop wise, but the honey we get is all right. Well, I like to think it's world class. Our honey's won multiple Great Taste Awards. This year we've won the highest award for that. We won 3 stars for the Welsh Wildflower. So what we don't get in volume, we get in quality on the honey. We don't actually breed any queens, so we buy all our queens in. That's how we make our nukes, and we sell several hundred colonies of nukes a year. Now, about halfway through the beekeeping journey, or I say once I moved to the farm here, we started doing a little bit of beekeeping supplies. Only doing it small scale, but that quickly became a lot bigger than what I thought it was ever going to be. And now we're one of we sell some of the best equipment in Europe, in the UK. I'm not going to say we're one of the biggest. We're not that at all. The way I like to describe Greeny Griff in the beekeeping supplies industry is where, imagine if Carmarthen Town, a town you've never heard of, gets promoted to the Premier League. That's where Greeny Griff is in the world of beekeeping supplies. We haven't got the money, we haven't got the stadiums, but what we've got is good players and the guts and the determination to make it happen. And we're very thankful. We've got amazing suppliers. We've got a lot of sole agency agreements in the UK now, and that's really allowed us to grow the business. And when we started this business, it was just me. Now with 4 full-time members of staff, we've got a great team and very positive the journey we've been on. And for most of my beekeeping journey, I've worked basically full time, but basically now we're full time on the bees, and we started this from nothing basically. So that's why it's taken me so long. I had 2 hives in 2010, and it's 2025 now, and it's taken me that long to get here, and basically because I started with nothing.
Yeah, I totally know how you feel about that. Well, look at me, it's taken me ages to get here, but you kind of see something you want and you just go and get it. But even though you know it's going to take long, you make that decision and you put all your kind of things out, your feelers out, and you just go for that. You get your head down and go for it. And obviously, congratulations to you because you got what appears to be, I don't know the books, but a very happy business. We've got very happy staff, and it shows through that you're supplying a lot of good quality equipment now, because you're now the dealer for Anel, aren't you, in the UK, which is really good beekeeping equipment. And so you sell what, Langstroth hives, British nationals?
Yeah, so we basically we started off only selling nationals.
Yeah.
And then once we started selling the Anels only come in Langstroth.
Yeah.
So we started selling a lot more Langstroth kit then once we had Anel come on board. And I tell you what, Langstroth, I know it's the most popular frame size in the world. For me, I think it's probably the best beehive in the world, the Langstroth format. Way better than national. And if I were to have my time back again, I would have started off on Langstroth and not gone down the national road. And maybe I would have just kept national nukes for the nuke market, but would have kept Langstroth for all the honey hives.
Yeah.
But I really think, looking at the trends, I think national has probably peaked in the UK, and I think Langstroth is really coming up. I think the Flow Hive has accelerated that in the UK.
Yeah.
And I think if we give it 10 years' time, I think Langstroth may even overtake national in popularity. It's really, and the age of YouTube and everything, if we were to go back 10 years when I started beekeeping, there was no YouTube beekeeping. You literally had a catalogue, and that's all you could buy was that. So, you didn't know anybody with Langstroth or did anything else. Now you can log on YouTube and see people across the world using Langstroth and why they use it. And, that is making it more popular. And I suppose people like me importing Langstroth, we're making it, an affordable option and a viable option for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, when I go to America and do presentations at different places, I mean, the majority of people use Langstroth, and you come over here and everyone uses Dayton, but it's surprising even over here now, there's a lot of Langstroth creeping in. And you speak to other people in Ireland or in England and Scotland, there's quite a few people using Langs as well. I think it's because it's such a universal size. To give people out there some idea, my Dayton frames are actually about 1 inch longer than the Langstroth, but the British nationals are about a third less than my Dayton and about half the size of a Lang, aren't they? But
yeah,
that's
and
what
you've
makes
got a lot less.
Yeah, but that's interesting, because what makes, I think, the nationals so interesting to many people in the UK is most people double brew, don't they, a British national. So you can buy a nuke on these smaller frames that are British national frames, and I should have had one here with me I could hold up and show everybody. It would have been interesting to do the comparison. And it's really great to discuss all this, because so many people are going, what frames are that? You know what I mean? It's like, well, we use Dayton, you use British national and Langstroth, but when you see the size together, that's why I think a lot of people use double brooded nationals in the UK as a minimum. And then you can have a small colony that overwinters, then that you add in the spring, or you just leave them as a double brood all year, and then you add your supers on that. But it's really interesting to kind of look at the configuration that people have, and that's what this YouTube thing and everything is all about, because it allows you to make an informal decision on what's available and what might work for you. I suppose you get people in your shop asking you that all the time. What should I start on? What frames?
Yeah, that's true. That's one question we get asked all the time for people starting off, and I don't like telling people this is what you should do. So basically, what the way I answer that question is I explain the pros and cons of the two. And at the minute, if you were going to start beekeeping and you wanted to buy a nuke, up until maybe 2 years ago, you could really only buy a national nuke. We sell Langstroth nukes now, and a few other people sell Langstroth nukes now. I think that's only going to grow. But I suppose the trick is, if someone starts beekeeping now and they really want to maybe buy someone out, I bought another bee farmer out in this area, or say they want to buy secondhand kit. A lot of national kit is going to be more available secondhand than Langstroth. So if you were going to go down the Langstroth road, you're going to have to buy new. But there's a lot of pros to that. No disease and etc. with going down that road. But it's a lot easier, especially if, say, you're bee farming like I was, and you want to expand, and someone is retiring. It's a lot easier absorbing someone else's bees when you're all on the same frame. So
absolutely,
up and chain supers and everything fits the same thing. And And it's like what you've got there now in France. What's behind you there is a Paradise extracting line. The reason you can get an extracting line like that is because all your frames are the same.
Yeah, exactly. It is exactly that. But I will say that my machine it's been set up for half, they call it half size Gaydon, but it actually will do Langstroth. It's actually made as a Langstroth, but it's just slightly adjusted. But yes, and I will add this in that, isn't it true that you were looking at getting the line for your new extraction unit, but because you've got so many frames, because you've absorbed another bee business, it's made it so complicated to have that unfortunately, that narrow line of frames, you had to go through to twin extractors instead.
Yeah, and I mean, with me, it's really awkward because I've got commercial supers, I've got national supers, Langstroth on the Langstroth, but within the national, then I've got SN1, SN4, and I've got Manleys.
So all that is completely unfathomable to me. Those things, because I don't use them. I don't work them.
Is totally different, and
yeah.
And you got to look then and you think, well, should I sell all those other boxes? And you think, well, I've got it all, and those that follow my channel, David Wainwright has been a huge influence on my beekeeping and the way I do things. And he doesn't want a line. And he, up until I think this year when he had his new needling machine, they uncapped everything by hand. Now I have bought an automatic uncapper, which will take most of the frames, but there will still need to be some manual uncapping.
Is that the Lego? Sorry to interrupt. Is that the Lego one? You got the DS1, is it, or DS2?
No, it's the Thomas one. So it's
right.
It's basically the front end of an extracting line.
Okay.
But it doesn't go onto like the spinner you got.
Okay,
it goes on like a tray, and then we take the frames from there and we manually put them in the spinner then.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned before as well about before a certain time, many people were still decapping by hand, where I've only just stopped decapping by hand, but there's actually something quite romantic about it, isn't there? When you decap, and you can actually get quite a lot done. I know Paul Horton, he has someone who does his frames manually as well, and you had the manual thing recently. It's not that new really to have I wouldn't say new, but it's not that used by everybody to have a mechanical decapper. It's something quite personal, isn't it?
Yeah, and people laugh sometimes. They go, "Oh, you still uncap by hand?" But I tell you what, right? You'll uncap a frame by hand probably faster than the machine would, but the machine would beat you at the end of the day for the amount of frames it does. Because the machine doesn't get tired, you do. And David was telling me when he was looking at the New Zealand machines, because he was thinking of what uncapper to go for. In New Zealand, they sell these massive tables for like 4, 5, 6 people to uncap by hand on. So, even in New Zealand with the Manuka, they still find it viable to put 4 guys on a table with a fork and uncap by hand rather than push that through a machine. So, and like you said, Paul, I think his mum does all his uncapping with a Hive tool. And he does big volume. I mean, he's a big bee farmer. He produces a lot of honey. But it's work at the end of the day, and I should do a tough job digging holes, putting gates in. Uncapping by hand is a lot easier than digging holes out in the bog.
It is, and there's something to be said. I know this machine, when I do use it, it will miss some, and I'll have to go and scrape certain frames, go check them all. So you could argue that that's a double process where you could have done it all just by having a straightforward decapper. But you accrue to something, don't you? You go to something you think is going to work with beekeeping. But the great thing is, if you've got people now, like you said about YouTube before, it wasn't around years ago, and the message wasn't, you couldn't make the choice. I've had such an amazing tool for me to be able to go to ask and see so many people because of what we do and who we meet and everything. And now I've made a decision. I still don't know whether it's the right decision, but you're now fitting out your new honey house as well. So you've got what? You've got that decapper from Thomas, and then you've got twin extractors.
No, it's one
big one
frame. Yeah. I was thinking of going down maybe 2 like 20 or 2 24s or something. But then I thought, you know what? Let's just go for the big boy. Let's go for one big one, and we just spin everything out with that. And it's quite a simple system, really. We got an uncapping machine. We got a big extractor, a honey sump. We've got a capping spinner that will probably go alongside the uncapping machine to spin the cappings there. And then all the cappings then will go into an Apimelter, and we'll get the last bit of honey out of the Apimelter. But that's basically it. There's a pump in between the sump and the barrel if we put in the buckets, or the sump and so not the barrel. If we were going to do barrels, we can pump into a barrel straight, or if we want to do buckets, I've got a big 300 kilo tank, which is basically the same size as a barrel. We'll pump into that and bucket from the bottom of that. So it's a really simple system. It's a lot, not too different to what we're doing now. It'll just be probably 4 times faster than the way we're doing it now. So, and if you were to ask Andy, how long it takes us just to extract honey, it takes ages.
Well, but in fairness, I've seen the process you do, and what you're suffering from is just growth, because you started it in one area, you've made the area good, you had made it clean, tidy. Now you've got so much honey coming in that you need to store it in a place to warm it, but then you've got your warming room was further away, and it's just all these logistic things that you come across that you have to kind of live with until you can fix it. Because at the moment it works, but you put up with a lot, and eventually you say, this year we're going to plan to do that, and suddenly you future-proof your next move. I think that's what you're doing, and you perhaps don't see it, but I can see it. And what you've done now, you've now built a new extraction room, haven't you?
Yeah, basically, like, my motto's always been, do the best you can with what you've got. And that's what we've done. We had a lot of buildings on the farm which were used for agricultural purposes, or when I say agriculture, we still agriculture. We keep livestock and we produce food. It's just the livestock is different. They were just rubbish buildings designed to keep sheep or cows, etc. And we've just adapted them for beekeeping, or bee farming then. And we didn't have the money at the start to build new buildings, so we've just, there's a room here, we'll make this for this. There's a building there, we'll put a warming room in there, and we've just gone round like that, really. I mean, I think what you've done is probably the best way of doing it. Throw one big building in, that is by far the most efficient and best way. And maybe one day, if we continue to grow, I'll knock one big building up somewhere. I got plenty of fields we can grow into. Us was one thing, being on a farm, and I suppose where you are with a bit of land. This once you're in an industrial site and you need to grow, and if there's no spare units there, what do you do?
That is a big issue.
If your honey farm is on a farm, the growth is a lot easier because you've got the space to grow into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Same with you. Say you wanted, argument's sake, right? You may never do this, but say you wanted to build the same size shed again. You've got the space if you wanted to do it.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely,
not that you're going to build a big building that, but I guarantee you'll build an extension or a lean-to or something later on. That's just the nature of how things go. So, that's what we've done, basically. I mean, it's not the most efficient way of doing it. It's just the buildings was there. We didn't have the money to knock them down and build something new at the time. We've just done things as and when we could afford to do it. The new honey house, where it is now, that building was already there. We've just added an extra bay on the back. We made it 3 bays, no, not 2. And even now, I think we've built it too small. But
I don't think you have. I think you will move things out to make. And when I say that, I don't mean, I think it is too small. What I'm saying is you're. It's like this place. It's going to take me ages to configure everything in this room, and I think that's what you'll do. And I think you might even do your bottling in another building you build, which you are building already for storage. You could even do that, and then have even more room in your extraction room, because you find that works better. That's what I'm saying is, but you've got scope now to move stuff, to be more flexible.
That's one thing that is on that building. There is room to build another bay at the back again, to have it 4 bays.
Yeah.
So we may need to do that, but a lot of it is costs. You know, the reason I think 3 years ago, me and Angara were talking about getting the next honey house sorted. COVID and everything came, things got so expensive. We tried to do it twice, priced everything up, but we couldn't afford to do it.
Yeah.
So, you know, we did it last year. Well, it feels like this year, but, you know, in 2024, we did it then and basically took all year to do, and we still haven't finished it. But there's no debt on the building. All the machinery that we bought is paid off. The building's paid off. There's no debt on it. So it took a long time to do, but I don't owe any money on the building, and you know that's how I like to do it.
Yeah, I think that's key with all beekeeping. And everyone can say, "Oh, you're really lucky you haven't got loans," and I haven't. No, this building was what I've just done is we're not talking about that now. But in terms of that whatever you do in beekeeping, you've got to try and do it to your limit, but you've got to be debt free, because you can't really afford, unless you get an agricultural special loan. It's really hard to make it pay if you're on loans, because that's how businesses tumble in beekeeping, and you see it time and time again.
Yeah, and you know where I am in Wales, I know what a bad year is. Yeah. Last season was a bad year for me. You know, my honey crop was down massively. You know, probably over half of what we normally get. We were down over 50% easy. You know that, and I've had a bad year like that before. That's the second bad year I've had since living in on the farm here. So, you know, I'm fully aware of we could have another bad year next year. Then you got to start buying more honey in, and then all of a sudden the job doesn't pay as well.
Yep.
You know, and then you're just selling honey just to keep the wheels turning. Then,
yep.
You know, the trick with honey is the money is in it if you're producing it yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Once you start buying it in, people think, oh, you know, people buying honey and there's loads of money. There's only loads of money in it if you do it on scale. You know, a few ton here and there buying the honey in, it's just turning, that's just paying everybody else.
Yeah. And also you brought into your business a bit of safety, where as you said, you're now supplying beekeeping equipment for quite a while now, quite a few years, but that is kind of a safety net. If your honey crop fails, you've got another source of income to keep things ticking over. It never is good, but at least you've got that kind of safety net on the business.
Yeah, and that's one thing that having a few bad years taught me. You know, we needed in Wales to be really diversified for me to be able to quit my job. So doing the nukes was a big part of that. You know, even if it's raining, we can buy queens in, and as long as it's half dry, we can make nukes and splits, and you know, we can continue to grow that. So you know that became almost like a big safety net for the bee farm. But even then, you know, if you were a bee farm producing the amount of honey we produce and the nukes we sell, there's not enough money there to create 4 full-time jobs.
No, absolutely.
Growing a beekeeping supplies business, I think, you know, with the expertise of being a honey farm, and you know, like you don't buy a box or two, you buy pallets of stuff, and you know that's how we sat there. We were buying pallets of goods in. Yeah, and we used to sell a little bit on eBay here and there, you know, just trying to sell. Maybe if we buy a whole pallet, sell half, you know, keep half type of thing. Yeah, and that side's grown, and you know, I think probably turnover wise, the turnover is probably more on that now than the bee farm, but the bee farm is way more profitable than the bee supplies, because sometimes when you sell something like 5-10% margin, you know, you sell something for £100 and you've made £5.
Yeah, but that is unfortunately the name of the game. That you are now you're a beekeeper, you're a farmer, you're a supplier, you're a deliverer, you all these things, and the profits aren't necessarily huge as people might think, because you've got wages to pay. But at the end of the day, as you said, it's turnover, and it keeps things trickling through, and eventually you start to pull it back. You know, you have to do it though. You have to have you have to borrow a bit. It is complicated, I know, and you know, I take my hat off to you, because what I saw when I wanted to talk about your previous job, because that was, but only in terms of, I know why you wanted to just do beekeeping, because there's nothing worse than turning up. Because like me, I used to do gardening, and you did like working for the national, was a ranger?
Ranger, yeah.
Yeah. So you turn up, because you'll be driving around, you go, oh, just pop into that apiary, and as you drive in, there's this cloud of bees hanging from a tree, and you're like, I just can't do these two jobs. And it's the most frustrating thing in the world. And you know that if you hadn't been doing your other job, you would have perhaps stopped that swarm going, and you would have, okay, you might not have had as much money, but it's much better to be able to look after your bees in a timely fashion than having to constantly try and catch up. I know as beekeepers, we never do catch up, but if you don't start the season right, and I think this goes for everybody, if you don't feel you're onto it at the start of the season, it's just downward hill all the way.
I'm never on top of it, because that's one bad side of nukes. You sell all the nukes early, when really you should be going around the bees, putting supers on and stopping them swarming.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we sell nukes from April to July, really. You know, it's pretty constant, and the nukes take up so much of your time. But
yeah,
nukes give you instant cash flow now, like there and then, where the honey gives you money at the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like you say that, but you've got to manage the nukes, because they're such a good resource to use to make more money, because you can split nukes and then sell that nuke you've split and then give that other one a queen, and off it goes again. But I think it's difficult for people to understand that it's such a lot of work at such an intense time. You've got to really, we're all like headless chickens in April and May, aren't we? You know, it's just crazy.
And I think I'm at the size of, yeah, we're a decent sized honey farm, but we're nowhere near the size of what, you know, David Wainwright or Mantons or say Victor, you know, or look at Murray. You know, Murray's the biggest one in the UK. But yeah, I think, I'm not sure if he's got like a nuke division, but he's got a queen rearing division within his business. Yep. And I think once you grow to a certain size, then you can have people, right? You guys are just doing nukes. You guys are just on honey. You guys are just on queens. And then your business really becomes streamlined and efficient and a lot more profitable, because you're not running around doing everything. You know, at the minute, me and Andy do everything on the bees. You know, we're running a decent size nuke business, and you know, we try and run a decent size honey business. You know, but you know, sometimes the weather doesn't play ball there. But it's a lot of work for two people. But I can't afford to bring someone else in at the minute and go, you know, right, you're on nukes.
Yeah, totally.
And you know, it's the stress of bringing new people in as well, because nobody is as good as you, because you know your business, you know your bees. You know, it takes time to get into a job. You know, I remember when I became a ranger, you know, I thought I was pretty good until I spent time with the guys that were already doing that job for a few years. You know, you soon realize these guys know this job way better be. But you know, you give someone a year in post, they like develop like that. The graph goes up like that. They become as good as you. And you know, once you've got those people, and I think people like Marie, Wayne, that they've been really good at that. They've brought people in who were not beekeepers. You know, Yolanta, she was never a queen reader. She's developed that with Marie.
Yeah.
And arguably, she could be the best queen reader in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's got an amazing reputation, and you know, it's just that skill has been allowed to develop there in post. And you know, credit to these, you know, honey farms. They've created amazing bee farmers and queen readers. You know, and I like to think that, you know, what, maybe one day winning Griff, we'll be able to produce people like that as well. You know, really expert bee farmers. You know, and grow with them. And you know, because the people are an asset. They're not just they're not like a number for a business. You know, the people you employ, if you look after them well, they're going to grow your business with you.
Absolutely. I think with beekeeping as well, it must be really hard to find someone, not that you can trust, but one that wants to be part of your business. And I know you have done up till now. And it's like when you start, you spend so long building it, and you're so worried about bringing someone in. And that's probably the problem I've got, is I'm scared of bringing someone in, because first of all, it's the monetary side, and B, I know that no one can do the jobs how I want them done. But you've got to let that go, haven't you, when you get bigger?
Yeah.
You just have to let that go.
Yeah, and you look at me, I'm very lucky. Andy and S sit with us. They're amazing. They picked the job up like that. Andy came in a role. He did a little bit of work with Wainwright, extracting honey and everything. And straight on the bees. He's almost a year into it now.
Yeah,
I could send him on the nuke yard, say what I want doing, and it'll get done. I think Andy was finding queens within the first couple of days on the bees.
Brilliant.
So that's one thing I've learned with employing people as well, and working with people. The job is not as difficult as what you make it out in your head. It's a lot simpler than what you think.
It's an interesting point there. Yeah.
Yeah. That's another way of doing it. Say you got a job on the farm or something, right? Or like a bit of DIY in the house, and you're just dreading doing it, right?
Yeah.
That's told me put some shelves up or something, and I'm thinking, you know what? That job's going to take me all day. I don't want to do it. But then once you go and get the drill and the screws, and half an hour you've done it, and you think, sure, that job was way worse in my head than what it actually was.
I've done that so many times.
The truth in beekeeping is way worse in your head. If you just go down and do it,
Do you know what? I've got some outstanding jobs, and one of them was to get all my accounts done this week, and I thought it would take me like 4 days. It was done in a day and a half. And it's like, why didn't I just do it when I had the chance earlier? It was just, but that's why we are what we are.
Yeah,
I'm so stubborn. I don't know if you are, but I get stubborn with these jobs that are building up. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that until I've done that first. And when you do that job, you go, I wish I'd done that before. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So I've got some of your. It's going to show off some of your honey pots. I've got a couple here.
That.
So you have the hex jars, yeah?
Yeah, we sell almost everything on hex.
Okay, and I think I have to say, I love your marketing. You've cracked this right from the start. Everyone who I speak to says you do a really good job of that. I don't know how you manage to post so often on Instagram and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. What I do like is I love these cut combs as well. I know this is only a couple of your products, but I do like all this kind of stuff. Beautiful packaging. And to me, that's just like, reach out and touch me, as they say. I won't sing anymore, don't worry. But it's just really reachable, and I think you've done a really good job. But tell me about your machine that you've bought. So you can fill jars with it, but you can't label them, can you?
No. We at the minute, we sell several tons of honey a year. Probably the 70% of the honey we sell is from September to December. Funny enough, we sold a lot more honey this month than we've ever done for January before, which is I don't know, maybe I think I've seen other people say that online as well. So I think all this fake honey news is really getting people wanting to buy local. But yeah, we at the minute in the small honey house we jar everything still by hand. So we've got a 100 kilo tank and a 50 kilo tank, and we can do anything from say 200 to 400 kilo a day, like that. It's a long old shift. We tend not to do that. We try and do it in, say we do 2 tanks a day, 200 kilo when we're busy, and we just do that every single day, and we just get through it. But in the new honey house, I've actually got a big Swanty bottling machine, the same as you on the turntable. It just
brilliant.
There's no room for it in the honey house. But the plan is we're going to get the Swanty bottling machine up and running for when we're really busy. And when we're not busy, Thomas have bought out a new bottling machine. It can do, say, up to 5 ton in a year. And we're going to use that for small batches. And that's the road we're going to go down. So we're not, don't get me wrong, some stuff we're still going to jar by hand. Say we're doing the heather or something that we don't sell a lot of. That is still going to be old school in a tank. There's no point getting all those pipes dirty for, say, 2 or 3 buckets with
No, I agree. When you're bottling, you do. I work mostly in barrels actually as well, and I kind of know exactly where you're coming from. To get the Swinton machine set up, although you can do buckets with the hopper, it is better to do like 300 kilos at a time. That's a barrel. If you can, it makes sense because there is a few pipes to wash out, and it just does a better job. If you do it all at once.
It is, and that's the problem we've got now, and that's why everything takes so long. So we currently use the Swanty Apimelter to decrystallize the honey. So that basically in the winter from September, December is just on all the time, day and night. We run it 24 hours. Buckets go in, crystallize, they come out, decrystallize, and crystallized bucket goes in again. It just doesn't stop. That in itself takes a long time, and you wouldn't believe it, right? I've actually got a big warming cabinet, a Lyson one, which I bought years ago, that you can wheel a pallet into it. So but all this kit that is designed to make the job easy, but I never had the room. You buy these things thinking, yeah, I've got room for that. Then when you see it, you think that ain't ever.
Excuse me, interrupt. Is that the one we call a cube? Like there's another one made.
Yeah, it's called a single barrel warmer, but you'll get 2-3 barrels in it. I don't know why it's called a single. It's a full pallet goes into it, so you can go 3 high with buckets, and it's like a half a ton of honey basically that you can decrystallize in one go. So we've got that. We've never used it just because we never had the space, but that is now in the new honey house. So we're on the brink of becoming a lot more efficient with it. So instead of bottling honey every day in the winter, we may be able to shrink that down to we'll bottle twice a week. That's where I want to be, because for the last probably 6-7 years, all winter, I'm just bottling honey. And that's why at the minute people go, oh, Griff, you're still extracting honey. Basically, it's because we bottle so much honey in the winter. The room is so small, you can't extract honey and bottle and keep everything clean in that room at the same time. So the honey sales takes priority. So we've got to get the honey out. So then extracting gets put on the back burner until we're quiet, but we don't get quiet. So I think
it's a good problem to have, but it's a problem now that you've. I was just going to say before about when you're bottling all the time, when you're able to bottle a larger amount more efficiently as well in a room that's more kitted out, you will then have better times between bottling when you can have a pause and do other stuff. But and everyone, when they learn how to use the machine, well, you can say, right, you will be on bottling today. A bit like when you see Bob Binney's staff talking, though, and they do videos, they say, oh yeah, I've got so-and-so on bottling for 2 days, or that's what makes me interested. I'm like, you can what's the word? You can delegate because you've got more infrastructure and a better setup, and that will come though for you. So it sounds great. I mean,
and in the new honey house, we've got an extracting room and a bottling room. So next year, the two of them can happen at the same time. So this was the last year we're doing it. I said that last year too, but this year I really mean it.
But you know me, there's a difference between saying something and doing it. I've been stuck in my veranda for another year as well. But I mean, it is what it is, as we say in beekeeping, isn't it? So
we're not millionaires, so we can just do the best what we can,
I did want to ask you at the start, can you give us and people out there just an overview of your nectar flows, what they're like in your specific area where you are in Wales, but whereabouts in Wales are you?
We're West Wales, Southwest Wales, so Carmarthenshire, Pembrokeshire and Ceredigion. Sorry. Those are the 3 counties we keep bees on. And basically, if we're lucky, like we were not last year, the year before, we had the best spring we've ever had. And that's why we won 3 stars with the Great Taste Awards last year, because of the spring honey. And we had probably the best hawthorn honey flow that I've ever seen. And we always get a little bit of a hawthorn honey flow, but not enough really to get a crop off it. And those of you in this area, when you get hawthorn honey, you smell it walking up to the apiary. And a dandelion was really good that year. So basically, the first bit of honey we get is dandelion and hawthorn if we're lucky. That does come in every year, and sometimes I get complaints when I sell the spring nukes. Yourself, when the bees are working a dandelion, all the wax turns almost like as yellow as the truck. And people say, what kind of chemical have you put in this hive? Why is it so yellow? It's basically the dandelion. So that's our spring flow. And basically, once the hawthorn and the blackthorn goes over, there's nothing. We do get a bit of a June gap, although the June gap comes earlier and earlier every year. And whether that's climate change, whatnot, I don't know, but that's what I'm tend to seeing. And then basically the main crop is, it used to be clover years ago, but now it's bramble and Himalayan balsam.
Yeah.
That tends to be now the main crop.
Right.
We don't get much light honey. When I started beekeeping, I mean, most of my honey was, if you were to show honey, it would be like the light honey. You got light, medium, and dark. Now, probably, I mean, top 90-something% of our honey is actually a medium honey. We don't get much light honey at all.
And that probably would have been clover more so in the previous year, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think the balsam and the bramble, turns it a lot more medium.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of balsam, I think we had a nice bit of balsam come in late last year, which saved us a bit, and that kept the honey runny still in the frames. We can uncap a frame today and it'll still be runny, which is
that's really lucky for you, because
it's a miracle. Because last year, if I told you, you'd cry how many supers of honey that I had to put in the Apimelter last year just to get the honey out of it.
But at least you got it out, I have to say.
At
least you managed to get the honey out, though. Just to,
Yeah, and that's one thing I tell every bee farmer, or someone thinking, what machine should you get? And I remember asking when I was becoming a decent sized honey farm, I remember asking Rob Nicholas and Alex Ellis, what would you guys buy if you were a honey farm? And basically that's what they said was uncapping machine, extractor, and an Apimelter. Well, I didn't buy an uncapping machine, but I bought an extractor and I bought the Apimelter. And I tell you what, they were 100% right with the Apimelter, and that's why we actually own 3 of them now.
Wow.
Yeah, it is the best, one of the best bee farming tools you can get.
Yeah.
And beeswax, decrystallized buckets, decrystallized jars, decrystallized honey in the frames, melt it out. If you use it properly, it doesn't increase the HMF too much. It is a wonderful machine.
Yeah.
And I remember when I did my DASH disease training, one of the bee inspectors there, he was actually recommending bee farmers in high disease areas, when they should go on the oilseed rape, don't spin the honey out, just Apimelt all of it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and that was a bee inspector that said that. So, I mean, I don't think you've got a big Apimelter, have you?
I don't have one.
Yeah.
The reason why I don't is because I use barrels, and I go into a barrel, and then I allow it, I keep it warm until it's settled, and I skim off the top. And then when I melt my barrel, I use it's like a lance, or what you'd call a big potato masher, and it sinks down into the honey, and it doesn't affect the HMF as well, because generally these new ones now aren't allowed to go to any great temperature. You can't go, I'll whack it up to 50 or 60. It's got to be like 35, 40. It sinks down over 3 or 4 days. What I have learned to do is insulate the barrel. And then when I take the cover off, I did a video on it, you can then scrape any bits off, and your honey is pretty clean. And I think it's interesting to mention, though, that with people wanting real honey, I actually like to leave a little bit, not a lot, but if there's, what I'm getting at is if there's a little bit of fine wax on the top of my honey when it's bottled, I don't think that's a bad thing. I would rather my honey look authentic and be authentic. And I think that if you're going out all out and you're a young beekeeper out there, don't worry too much about getting it absolutely pristine. It's got to be honey. Honey has wax with it and pollen and all that. And I would say people, when I speak to them, they want to have a real product, not just this pristine, non-crystallized. I mean, we all warm our honey a little bit when we sell it, because it's the only way we can get it out and jar it and everything. But I just think that's the way forward. I don't think we should be getting it all perfect. I think it detracts from its natural state.
Yeah, and if you were to go to any shop and look at a Gwyn and Griff jar of honey, I guarantee you it's crystallized.
Yeah.
Once you jar it, it crystallizes very fast.
Yeah.
And that, like you say, that doesn't bother me at all. Real honey crystallizes. It's the squeezy bottle stuff that never crystallizes is what you got to be wary of.
Half of the battle I think we're facing as beekeepers is educating the public how to perhaps be able to triage or sort out what would be probably a good beekeeper's honey and a non-beekeeper's honey, or a honey that's likely to be adulterated. And there's a lot of people now that have done a lot of work, and they're pushing things with other things. And these big bottlers and honey handlers and they should be made aware that they should have a way of saying on the label. I know it's a very emotive subject, this, at the moment, because it costs a lot of money for people to bottle stuff. But us local beekeepers, we have had nothing to worry about, because we are already doing a real job. But it's just informing the public what to look for, and always buy from a beekeeper, as you know. I mean, when you see this, and you can trace yours, there's no doubt that is your honey. You've got the security tag on it on the top as well. I'm actually going towards that, but I won't be with my new labels initially, but that will be something I do later on. But always buy from a beekeeper, or someone you know is a beekeeper you've heard from. So I think you've done really well in bringing your brand in. Is there anything you could share about how you brand your product, or some kind of, just like an overview of where you started when you first started selling your honey and how it grew into that?
I think the trick is you've got to stand out. So we decided to go with a hex jar on purpose. I think, to be able to buy a hex jar off the shelf and that be the same shape as a honeycomb, I mean, wow. Other industries have to spend millions of pounds to get like a custom jar to suit whatever industry they're in. I mean, the hex jar is off the shelf, and nobody really bottles honey in hex jars anymore. You never see it in the shop. So when my honey ends up on the shop shelf, it stands out straight away because the jar is different. Now, the downside of that is you can't label a hex jar with a machine, not with a cheap machine, and you got to do it by hand. So that's off-putting. But for me, because it's difficult and because it stands out, it's worth it.
Yeah.
We're looking at getting a labeling machine, but the cost is going to be, 15, 20 plus £1,000.
Yeah. It's a big step to make, isn't it?
It is. It's not one of these label room machines, a few £100. I mean, it's...
Yeah.
And, and another thing we do, which is different, a lot of people will sell one size jar because it's efficient, it's cost effective, and, you got one product, that's the price, it's easy. We sell a 1 ounce jar, a 5 ounce jar, an 8 ounce jar, a 12 ounce jar, a 1 kilo glass jar, a 1 kilo plastic jar now, which is a new on the market. The reason we bought that in, a lot of chefs wanted to buy honey, but there's a no glass policy in a lot of kitchens.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
They couldn't buy the kilo jar.
Right.
We've always sold a 3 kilo bucket in a plastic. But some chefs, they may only want honey for a small dish or a one-off dessert. They don't want to buy 3 kilos. A kilo suits them. So we sell the same honey across all those jars, which is a big cost. You've got to buy a pallet of every single size.
Yep.
Which makes it again difficult. But because it's difficult, because it's a lot of work, other beekeepers don't want to do it, and there lies the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Do what's hard, do what other people don't want to do, because that is your way in.
I think that's an interesting kind of message. That it's really good. Yeah. I mean, as I said, I really like all your packaging you've done, and fair play to you. Looks really good. One thing I'm interested to know, okay, so this is a question about equipment. What is overall the best and most useful piece of equipment? I know what you're going to answer with. What's the most and best useful piece of equipment you've ever bought for the honey farm?
Well, from the conversation we just had, it's the Apimelter, hands down.
Right.
Hands down. Wax production, decrystallizing buckets, decrystallizing jars, melting, getting the honey out the cap bins. It's just, getting honey out the frames, just that thing does everything.
Yeah. And do you think it's because it's kind of made by beekeepers for beekeepers originally, and it does actually, to me, getting honey out of frames is so important. And if it does that, it's like a lifesaver, isn't it?
Yeah, and say at the end of the year, say supers come through the system, and you look at those supers and you spin them out, and you think, you know what, that frame is a bit grubby. I don't really want that back in the system. I'll throw that straight in the Apimelter with all the cap-ins.
Yeah.
That reaches its end of life there. And then you've just got a nice clean frame at the end of it, and all the honey and the wax is gone from it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. The Carl Fritz one, actually, the one I started off with and we still use, it's like a circle, and the
I remember it. Yeah.
You know what, when I bought that, I'm sure I paid something like £500 for it.
Yeah.
That paid itself off in the first year.
Yeah.
The amount of honey that comes out of the cap bins, they paid for that machine in year one.
Yeah. There is one other machine though I know that you love, and that's your powered wheelbarrow, isn't it?
Oh, I love that machine. Yeah.
Yeah.
For beekeeping in Wales, it only comes out 3-4 times a year.
Yeah.
But to get the honey crop in and not break your back, that's an amazing machine. It costs a lot of money, but you do your back in, and that machine is cheap.
Yeah. I mean, also carting honey when it's muddy, it's not just your back. If you slip when you've got something to load your honey onto right near to the hives, and it might not take all the honey, you might have to do more journeys, but that's so much safer than doing a few ridiculously heavy journeys on dangerous. I've done it. I'm sure you've done it. Tripped over a bramble, and those little brambles get tangled up everywhere, and you're over. You're gone. Your honey's on the floor.
Oh, yeah. You drop a super of honey in the mud. There's a botulism risk then.
Yeah.
That super is finished. Put it back on the bees. You can't extract that. You know. So yeah, I mean. And I suppose the reason I need a wheelbarrow is because I was a bit dull starting off, and I'm still dull. You get off at a site, and the area is really good. The access isn't the best, and you go, you know what? Yeah, I'll put bees here. I've got the wheelbarrow. It's all right. But the trick is, don't be like me, and be like you. Have sites you can drive up to.
Yeah, I because I've got a flatbed and not very good grippy tires at the back, I kind of think it helps me in the winter, because if I don't go to my apiaries more than every 2 or 3 weeks, so sometimes I haven't gone for a month, but it's only because I haven't been in that area. But I know no one's nicked the hive because they just can't get in, and it's too far to carry them out. That is one good side, but come the summer, we get so dry. You could drive in, any vehicle to any place, but it is a good thing to be able to get right alongside, and that's always one of the things when you choose an apiary for sure. But you know what? There's apiary sites I want to move to that I'm thinking I might just do what you're saying and just put them there anyway, because it's too good a site not to use. And when you think if you don't do it, you regret it, and I'll probably be cursing, going, why did I put the bees at this site? Huge honey crops, 25, 28 kilos of super, backwards and forwards. But you do it, don't you? Because at the end of the day, I always think when you've got that honey on the bees and you get it off, I always feel like that clip on Ratatouille where the guy lets him out the jar over the canal and he runs off going, like he's escaping with what is his life. But that's me with my honey. I feel like I've robbed the bees, but you kind of you earn that because you had to do so much work to get that honey. And when you get that crop off and you get it at home, it's such an underlying relief, isn't it? Just to have that back at home with the honey. And it doesn't matter how long it took, you've got the honey. To me, that's how it works.
Yeah. And when you hear people moaning about they've got loads of honey and it's really hard to take off, I get my small violin out and I play the violin because
it's poor you,
that's a good problem.
It is a good problem to have, and I've had that, when I used my veranda, I was humping honey. Literally, it's only 20 meters, but it's a lot of 20 meters when you're going backwards and forwards because you can only do one super at a time. And when you've got 350 supers and you calculate the mileage that you won't have when you're in the honey house this time, it's a massive saving, and it's all about that.
Like one of my best sites is, if you watch my videos, I use the wheelbarrow there every single year.
I've been to the site.
Yeah, in a decent year, a ton of honey comes out of there.
Yeah, I remember you. That was your video. You did a ton of honey
Yeah,
from one apiary.
and this year, like being one of the worst years we've ever had, I think still almost half a ton came from there.
Yeah. That's the place where the cows greet you when you drive up, don't they? But
yeah, but the cows are not there anymore. It's all a solar farm now. It's totally changed. Yeah,
so your bees can poop over all those lovely clean panels.
They can, yeah. And we won't tell the solar panel guys that their electric is dropping because of that. But yeah, I mean, when you get really good sites like that and the honey comes in, I mean, don't turn it down. Just work out an easier way to get the honey off, and that's what that wheelbarrow did for me.
I've worked out if I can get someone with me for like 3 or 4 weeks of the honey pulling period, it's not just let them do it. It's share the work, and then everybody's safer. That's, I think, a really good. And you might pay a bit of money to get them to help you do it. And I pay the guy well, but for me, it's worth its weight in gold because it's having another pair of hands and someone looking out for you because you're tired. You're exhausted, you're likely to slip. And if you slip and there's no one around and something happens, you're on your own, you're in the middle of nowhere, Yeah. It's one of the, now you've got Andy with you. That's one of the bonuses, isn't it, of having someone with you?
It's massive. And, we went to that apiary last year to pull the honey crop off and the wheelbarrow broke. The fuel line.
I remember that, yeah.
If it weren't for Andy, maybe that honey still be on. Because we carried half a ton of honey between the two of us all the way back. So, I mean, beekeeping with someone is a lot easier.
Yeah.
When you're just doing checks or supering, you don't really need someone be with you, really. But certainly when you're doing the heavy jobs, and like Wayne was telling me, when they're pulling the honey, there's a few bee farmers around where he keeps bees. They all go together. And like mob gang the apiaries and pull the honey off together. They help each other.
Yeah.
So I mean, that kind of scale, they're pulling tons and tons and tons. It's daunting for the guys at the end of the day. So yeah, they go down. I think 3 truckloads of people stripping honey in a day, and then they do their sites back to their sites. So they like the olden days in the UK. When someone had hay down. All the farmers would go and help that farmer with the hay. Then everybody will go and help that farmer with the hay.
Yeah. And it's blitz quickly and it's off and then you're done,
Yeah, and the job is not so daunting and it's not so backbreaking.
Yeah. I have to say, I love the summer and I love the harvest period, but because I tried something different myself last year to try and cage my queens and put my honey back on and then come back and take the honey off after. It's actually worked out better for me to do that than put the bee escapes on, take the honey off, and then cage a queen. So there's so many ways of doing things, but we never know in every season what's sometimes the best way. When you're on your own, it's really hard. But when there's people doing it with you, it just speeds everything up. Griff, I wanted to ask you, what have you found when you make your nukes up is the best way to introduce queens? Go on, give me your shot.
Yeah,
throw it out there.
I've changed my technique every year, and I think now I have found a way which is quick, efficient, and has a very high success rate. So we either make the splits a week before, so it's just 3 frames of brood or bees, whatever, however you want to do it. I think 3 frames minimum of bees, minimum 2 frames of brood. Ideally 3 frames of brood with stores on it. That's how I like to make them.
Yeah.
But it's a minimum 3 frames. 4 frames is better if you've got the resource.
Yeah.
Now, if you do it, say, a week before, you can go back, cut the queen cells out, and then drop the queen in. Or we'll make the splits that day and drop the queen in. Now, when I say drop a queen in, I don't mean literally drop the queen in. A queen cage, cut the plastic tab off straight away. Now, before, I used to leave the plastic tab on, put the cage in for 3 days, come back, check for queen cells again, then take the plastic cap off, then put it back in. That's how I used to do it. I don't do it anymore. We buy too many queens to do that anymore. So basically, literally, I cut the plastic tab off the queen. I tape up the fondant then with masking tape. I put a little cut in it. I don't release the workers anymore. Last year or the year before, I released all the workers. that takes too much time now as well.
It certainly does.
It does improve the chances greatly. So if you're only doing like maybe 5 queens or something, or you've just bought 1 queen, I would release the workers. But, you know, we're getting, I don't know, anything from, say, 24 to 35 queens a week, you know, when we're doing splits. I mean, we can't do that for everyone. So basically, that's how I do it. I do it the old masking tape trick. There's a video on my channel, and that goes in, and I just don't check that nuke for probably 2 weeks.
Yeah. And do you think as well that I've heard this from a lot of, well, we'd say old timer beekeepers, but once you put that queen in, don't come back and check her. Just leave it for at least a week, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, like you do.
100%.
Because do you know what I think happens? I think she escapes and she's in a corner of the hive somewhere. And the bees are like 50-50 or maybe 60-40 whether they accept her. But if you don't cause any stress around the colony, you maybe give some feed, you maybe put some pollen sub on as you do, or something like that, and there happens to be a flow on, and everything's sweet in the colony that's going on aside her being accepted, and you've left them alone, I think the success rate is better. Now, what you talked about was exactly what I used to do as well. But I did a load of queen introduction this year when I literally made the colonies, because I wasn't organized, and so I ended up putting the queens in exactly like you said, and I found my success rate was way better. Now, I don't know whether it was because it was late in the year, because there is the thought that late in the year, the bees and when I'm talking late, I'm talking pretty late. We're talking the end of September when I got my last queens in. But I made strong nukes and almost everyone accepted. Whether that was because the bees thought, we haven't got much choice here. There's no way we can raise a queen because the lack of drones around all that and the forage wasn't coming in, blah, blah, blah. But I just found everything got accepted. But I think what it was more was the fact that I got the queen out within a day of making the nuke. And she was eaten out slowly by the masking tape trick as well. And if people don't know what it is, masking tape is not insulation tape. Masking tape is decorator's tape that you use for masking up like sideboards or anything you don't want to get paint on. It makes a neat line. But if you put it onto queen cages and you make a pencil hole in it or a cross or whatever, the bees will see the candy underneath and they will smell it and start to try and get that candy out. But because the tape is just tough enough to stop the bees going in too quick, they can start to erode that tape, but it takes 2 or 3 days. And the process is slower than just having the tab removed in the candy. And I think you're right. I think that is probably now the best way of doing things.
Yeah, and it's not my way. I copied. I saw it with Bob Bidney. I know Bob Bidney was talking about it one time.
Yep, he did a video on it last summer as well.
Yeah, and I know Black Monday Honey, the guy gets his queens up, Melita bees. I saw him do it as well.
Yeah.
So it's not my technique. I've nicked it. And
well, I've nicked it as well. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's the best way to do it fast.
I would say yes. There is stories of people taking the queen from a laying colony and giving it to another laying colony, or a queen that's just been made queenless. I think that's too much risk.
I think that's very risky. I would never do that.
And I think the logistics of organizing that is complicated for us, because what I tend to do is make nukes up, move them to another apiary or take them to a nuke yard and then give them a queen there. Whereas ideally, it would be lovely if you could make splits in the same apiary and just bring your bees and queens alongside. But then there's a good theory on that all the flying bees will return to the colony that you just made a split from, and then you have a smaller nuke, but the queen, because they're mostly nurse bees of a young age, they accept the queen better. There's so many complex arguments, isn't there, about the best way to make a nuke. But I have to say, if I'm making a nuke up for, say, a breeder queen that's really important, I will definitely do it 7 days before, kill all the cells and make sure that the colony I chose in the first place was already a nice colony, and then I'll let all the adult bees fly off and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of things you can do, but when you're making a lot of nukes like yourself, I make quite a few. I just think you've got to get that balance, haven't you, between spending too long, because at the same time you're doing everything else all the time. You know?
And I think another big trick with making nukes and queen acceptance is you've got to feed the nuke as well. So if you drop the queen in, fill the feeder up, give them something to do.
Yeah.
Make them think, oh, this is good. We got food coming in. We got a queen in here with good pheromones. You got to give them everything that they want, I think. If you drop a queen in and they're starving, I don't think that's a good recipe as well. Get them drawing wax and everything. Just feed. My nukes, they live with a drum of syrup on top of them, basically.
Yeah.
I feed. I force the growth in them. That's all they got to do is just you bring the pollen in. I'll give you all the syrup you need to draw all that wax, the foundation.
It's almost like you force them to forget that there's another issue in the colony because everything else is going so well.
Yeah, I think you've got to, like David said, when you do nukes like that and you feed them constant, when you get a swarm, they're on the boil.
They are.
You catch a swarm and you could give them a full drum of syrup. They would have taken all the syrup, drawn all the flames. They're on fire, basically.
What I refer to as monster comb builders when they're in that mode, aren't they?
But if you do your nukes right, fresh queen in, constantly feed them with new, and we just drop flames of foundation all the time. Feed. The second brood box, feed. They draw them as if they're a swarm. And David said, you're keeping the bees on the boil.
Yeah, absolutely.
But because nukes and bees, they can go stale. Once they finish the boil, they peak. They just become in maintenance mode. And you've got to take the queen out, make a little split to get them back into that boiling mode again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of good words of wisdom, that, Griff. Thanks. What are you going to do in the next few weeks in terms of your bees? Are you basically planning to get into them in early March, or how does it work for you where you are?
I don't look at them till probably end of April. Wait till the weather comes in.
Right. Okay. So that would be
certainly March. I don't even look at them.
Because for us here, if the weather goes good in March, we're into our colonies, and we're probably putting supers on in the end of March, early April, if we can. Because I'll tell you why. I know Chris Manton has been doing this a lot on his bee farm. He's been putting supers above a crown board with a hole in the middle, and it's quite a good idea. There's some very good evidence to say it does take the pressure off your colonies. And if they don't want to use it, they don't go up. And if you can't get around them in time, or you're going to be away, which I am because I'm actually going away in April to the BBKA conference when I should be putting supers on, but hey, that's life. It gives you that little bit of time. Another method you can do is you can get a box, isn't it? And you can put a piece of plastic over a third of it, and then you leave the other third so they can come around the plastic if you're unsure about whether to put a super on or not. I love all these little tips that I pick up because I don't use them all the time, but some people ask me, I go, oh, you can do that. And I go, oh, I tried that and it didn't work, or it did work. There's so many things that we can share now about the best way. And I think getting back to that queen introduction, I think that's kind of the standard way now, isn't it? Just get your nukes made and it's done in a day. It's less work for you. And then you kind of walk away and you feed them and you go. So quick update on your honey house before we'll wrap this up and say goodbye. Let us know how you're getting on. You're going to be in there for this year?
We're definitely going to be in there this year. Me and Andy, we carried some of the stainless steel stuff in last week, so that one sink is kind of.
You picked up a load, didn't you? You picked up a load of it secondhand.
Yeah, picked up a load of secondhand stuff from a big factory in Swansea. It cost a lot of money, but they saved us a fortune as well. We've got to finish cleaning one stainless steel sink down again, and I think we have to buy at least one more operated sink because we've got to go for SALSA accreditation. But basically, once we put the stainless steel stuff in place, we can plumb the cold water in and work out what we're going to do then for central heating and hot water.
Okay.
We're going to need a lot of hot water in this room compared to the last one.
Yeah. Okay.
Whether we put in an air source heating system or we put in some kind of like a gas combi boiler or something, or an oil combi boiler, I don't know. I've only had one quote for air source heating so far. It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's like astronomical, isn't it? I know.
Yeah, and even with the there's a government grant or whatever. Even with the government grant, is huge money, and I feel
Yeah.
that I'm not getting the benefit of the grant. The guy supplying the air source and fitting it is benefiting from the grant, not me.
Yeah,
So
that is the argument, isn't it?
yeah, so for me, I don't think the saving is that I'm not going to spend a huge amount of money if I don't think I'm getting a saving on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, if a gas combi boiler with a big red bottle outside is going to cost me quarter of the price.
Yeah, and also there's one thing to say about gas: it's extremely efficient. What you put in, you get hot water straight away. You know, you haven't got to.
With a combi boiler, it's instant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So
exactly.
whether we do that for a few years, someone did tell me that if you want big honey contracts with, say, some supermarkets, they want you to have some kind of renewable. They want your honey house to be renewable energy powered. So, you know, gas wouldn't be ideal for that. But it comes down to cost, you know.
Yeah.
Like we said at the start of the video, I'm not a millionaire, far from it. You know, I'm scrounging my way through, doing the best I can with what I've got.
Yeah, it's not easy, but
it's not.
You know, can you just also refresh people about SALSA and what the accreditation is? It's a level of hygiene, isn't it, that you have to accrue to?
It is. It's basically everybody. If you're going to sell honey in the UK, you've got to have what you call stars on the doors. So you get your 5-star food hygiene. You get the food guys out just to sign you off. You can start selling honey. If you want to start selling honey into bigger shops, wholesale like we're doing, a lot of them want you to have more in place than just stars on the doors. So they want some kind of extra guarantee that you're super clean, super safe. You're following the industry's, you're following higher levels than what the industry puts out.
Yeah.
SALSA is the first level of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, if we've got SALSA, you could, arguably say, you know, if Co-op or Tesco or anybody, not that they will, but say they come knocking, we'd be in a position where we could sell them honey.
Yeah.
If you haven't got at least SALSA in place, these big guys won't touch you. So you've got to be on a higher level. And the way you set your rooms in, my old honey house could never be SALSA. It would never tick the boxes. We're building a new honey house to be SALSA approved.
Okay.
So we've got to have a designated area to change clothes. We've got to have, you know, it doesn't have to be knee-operated sinks, but you've got to have handless, I don't know, what do you call it, handless sinks or whatever you call them.
Yeah, the ones you operate with your knee.
Yeah. Or like on a sensor or something, so you're not physically touching the taps with dirty hands. So you wash your hands without touching anything, then go into the facility. So you've got to have all this kind of stuff, you know, multiple sinks in place, you know, I can't remember everything, but, you know, that's why our stuff now, the bottling is in a different room to the extracting, and the change rooms in a different room to the extracting. So everything's in different rooms. Every room will be independent of each other with their own hand washing facility and cleaning facility. So it's basically that, you know, we got to pay membership, I think, then for SALSA. So it's not for everybody, but if you're selling, you know, 10 a year, it's well worth it. Now the big packers, they will be something, it's called BRC, I think it's called, like bricks. That is 25 grand a year just to join.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you know, I can tell you now, Gruff Rees ain't paying 25 grand to sell honey into a shop. You know, if someone wants really good honey, you know, what I would class as, you know, top quality with the best in the UK, like most people watching here, we beekeepers, we all produce honey with the best in the UK. If somebody wants that honey from a safe, SALSA-approved facility, they can come to me. But if you want me to pay 25 grand for me to join this BRC thing, I'm not doing it.
I think that's, I'm not going to say it's stupid money, because it's not, because it obviously suits certain people with a certain type of business that's bottling all day, every day. And I imagine it also, that kind of level of hygiene would cover things like cheese factory and all that kind of stuff, you know, which I'm sure it does. But what I'm getting at is there's the same here. I'm actually looking to get accredited eventually. I might have to. I don't think this place would even come near it at the moment because it's not built to be on that level, and I'm not going to go for the highest level. I just want a similar accreditation like Salsa, so that people can come in and go, well, yeah, brilliant. Okay, and I think I'm probably 3/4 of the way there from what I've seen, but I'm actually going to do myself the work to make sure that I can, in time, adhere to it, because there's actually very little for beekeepers in Europe. It's not considered but when you become bigger and you start packing large quantities for supermarkets, that's a different thing altogether. So I know maybe long term, when I start selling to the supermarket up the road, I may have to adhere to that. So now is the time to start looking at that like you're doing. And it's a really interesting thing that when you start breaking it down, you can see why you need to do things in a certain way, because there is good rules and it makes good sense.
Yeah, and I think like insurance policies come into it. So say you're a big shop, you've got insurance in place, your insurance company will go, right, if you're going to buy ingredients of food, you have to meet Salsa as a minimum, for argument's sake. You know, these really big guys, you know, like say Tesco or something, they may insist on BRC. I don't know. I think, as far as I'm aware, I think there's only 2 BRC in the UK. I think that's Rose and Hilltop. I think they're the only. They're multi-million-pound businesses. What is 25 grand for them across the year? You know, they can absorb it. A business like mine could never absorb that kind of cost. But Salsa isn't cheap, but it's way cheaper than the BRC is like the highest level of.
Yeah, it is affordable. It is affordable in the level you want, which is great.
Yeah, and a lot of it really is. A lot of it is more paperwork as well.
Yeah, so, and I think you need, by that level, like some of these guys they have a permanent employee who's a QC, quality controller, who is a hygiene person, who is it's incredible.
Yeah, and we would need to have that in all the rooms. So say we extract honey and we write down when we clean things. We write down what we bottled today and what time we cleaned everything. It's just, you've got to be really on it with like your record keeping.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my record keeping now, I mean, I suppose it's not amazing, but it's good. We label all the buckets with what apiary has come from. You know, and we put the date in all the buckets, so everything's traceable. We know how old everything is, where it's come from. You know, that kind of thing. But you know, we I suppose we don't log down. We did a deep clean today. We did a light clean today. You know, we try and just be on top of it all the time, so it's always clean. But with the Salsa or the BRC, you've got to prove that has been done. So there's a lot more paperwork, and I'm trying to think what the word is. It's a lot more.
We call it over here. We call it traceability of honey, because I've actually was part of a group in Brittany, and I've come away from it for a while because my building wasn't ready to be part of that. And now I built the building, I'm considering going back into it, and it promotes local honey, and it's a way of guaranteeing what we call traceability in terms of where it come from, when it was harvested, what you did during the harvest time, when it was and it follows it right through. And that is a really good thing to have because it gives traceability. What I was going to ask to move on is, you said you do quite a bit of testing of your honey to guarantee the honey, if you buy any in, you always have it tested. Is that true?
We do. So say now we buy honey in, as a safety precaution, we test it. Our own honey, we don't have to test. I know it's my honey, and I know there's nothing in it, but it costs a fair bit of money to test honey, but we do it. Say now, for example, I buy honey from you. If it's the first couple of times, I will test every single batch.
Yep.
Say I'm buying then honey off you, it's from the same batch, but further down the month, then I feel a lot more comfortable there. I won't pay to test that because I've tested multiple samples from you. I know it's legit. I know it's right. But anybody new I buy honey from, we always test it.
Yeah.
Because
I do quote Bob Binney when he says this, and it's really interesting. He said, you only buy honey from someone who messes you around once.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of the wisest words, because yes, you take a hit sometimes, but you never do it again. And then you build a good rapport relationship with suppliers, buyers, and when you do get it tested from time to time, you know it's going to be good because you won't take any mess. You just can't do that.
No, and you know as well, when people say, no, I'm looking for honey, and people know I test honey, the guys that are rogues, they don't want to sell honey to the guy who's testing them. Because
Absolutely.
I'll always pay for the honey after I've tested it.
Yeah.
So the honey comes in today, I'll take the scoops out the buckets and send it straight off. So, you know, the guys not waiting ages get paid, but I'm not paying it until I know that is what it's supposed to be. So, and if it's not, hey, come here and get this honey because, you know, I don't want it here.
And I'll have my money back, please.
Well, I wouldn't have paid in the first place, but no. That's the safe thing to do. And I think all honey packers do that. I mean, probably big honey packers, they probably pay on like 60, 90 days, something crazy. You know, I don't like making people wait like that, but, you know, certainly pay it by the end of the month. I think that's fair. It gives you time to check the honey. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're selling food, you know, and, you know, health and safety and all this comes into it. You know, it's got to be right. And, you know, I've only ever bought honey from bee farmers. And for all the honey I've tested, not one has failed. I think one batch, the HMF, was higher than what we'd normally see. Yeah. But it was well within the perimeters. And I think basically that was probably honey that was maybe a year older or maybe 2 years older than what we normally buy. And it wasn't fresh honey. The honey was still good and everything. But when you test the honey, you see those differences in the honey. And, you know, when you test honey, you know, I'll share who we tested. We send it to Minerva. There's a lab in the UK. And they send it back and it's just all numbers. You haven't got a clue what it means. So you got to send them an email and go, what does these numbers mean? and then they'll reply, we've got the graph now. They'll say this row needs to be within, say, 5 and 20. Yep. You know, 10, spot on. So it doesn't need to hit a certain number, but it needs to be between these, you know, perimeters. Several perimeters that it needs to be in between. And you can test for anything. You can test for you know, sugar syrup. You can test for if there's antibiotics in there. There's the degree of tests. You can test for anything, really. They're a really good lab. Good, yeah. We have one over here I use. That's actually in Belgium, and it's well known by a lot of French beekeepers. There is some in France as well, but their results are very thorough. And you, like you said, you can ask for whatever you want. I don't test all mine, but because majority of the honey that I sell is always all my own. But what I do is I test my own to prove where it's come from. We had a Nectar flow 2 years ago in 2022, and we had that amazingly hot year. And we had this honey that turned up in right at the end of the hawthorn, Crataegus monogyna. If you out there, what's hawthorn? Crataegus monogyna. It's the white thorn, they call it in France. It came at the normal time, but it was stinking hot. But what everyone thought, and all the old timers told me, was, oh, it's definitely hawthorn. So I thought, I don't know. So I tested it, and it was a honeydew honey. And by testing it, I knew, and it cost me like 90 euros or something to get this tested. But I had a whole barrel of it, and it was a miela, we call it in France. And I'm so glad I tested it, because I could have forever in my life never had that again, and I would have never known. So it was a honeydew honey. It was dark. It was, well, not very dark, but it was darker than spring honey. It was fairly quick to crystallize, but the actual flavor and the test results are amazing. And I tell you what, having that resource to be able to get things tested is incredible if you're never sure. And it's brilliant. And that honey was like, people loved it, absolutely loved it. It was so incredibly like what we call a depth of taste. Yeah, really honeydew is funny. It's a non-floral honey. Yeah. People don't know what honeydew is. So when the trees grow, they transpire, they lose moisture through their leaves to keep cool. So aphids go up to the trees when they grow in the spring, and then aphids suck the juice out the trees. And when it's stinking hot and there's no natural flora around,
bees go to aphids, but probably more so when it's hot. I think they do it also when in normal nectar flow times, but to a much lesser degree, because as we know, bees aren't stupid and they will go to the nearest thing like a flower. But when there's nothing around, they'll go to aphids and they'll suck the honeydew that comes from the rear of the aphid that is a byproduct. And obviously when it's hotter, there's loads more aphids because the insect population explodes. So there's a reason why there's more aphids at that time, and there's a reason why there's less flowers because it's stinking hot and the flowers are finished. And then you get this, we had this period in mid-May where we'd harvested our spring honey. We're like, great, that's out the way. Okay, June gap, here we come. Woo, bit of a break. What's this on top of our hives? I only went there 2 weeks ago. It's another crop. It was just, that is what's so fascinating about beekeeping, I find, is you never know what to expect and you never know what's going to come along. You can have an idea, and in most years it sticks to the criteria or sticks to the route, but be prepared for odd things. And I was so glad I tested it because that just gave me such an eye-opening of what is actually out there.
Yeah.
Really
I sent honey this year. Well, first time ever. I sent my honey off for that DNA test.
Yep.
Down in Estonia. So I've sent a few jars over there this year. I haven't had the results back yet, but I think that's probably going to be the future of honey testing as well. You know, if it's got no DNA in it, you know, chances is that's not honey.
Yeah. I think we're all entering into this. We don't want to upset people, but the reality is we've got to protect what we work so hard to bring together. And I think that's the way forward. We've got to just trust in science and go by these tests. It's not ideal, but I know all my clients want to feel that they're getting the real deal, you know? And I think that's the only way to do it.
That's true. That's how you and me and a lot of people watching this video now makes a living by producing the real thing.
We are, yeah. David just asked, David McDowell, who we both know well, he just asked, when do us guys requeen our hives on average? Every second year. And I'm like, if my queens make 2 years, I'm pretty happy about that. But most of the time, it's less than 2 years or 2 years. I don't know how you are with that, with your production hives.
Yeah, well, I don't requeen my production hives at all.
Okay.
So I'm converted on David's way. I start off everything with a nuke. I buy all the queens in for the nukes.
Yeah.
Once they go into a hive, that's it. They come from that field dead. That's when they leave. You know, and that dead dog gets melted out, new frames of foundation puts in, and then a nuke will take its place. I don't try and keep the hives going. I think, you know, David's way of starting off with a nuke, putting a nuke in a hive, putting that in a honey producing site, and let that life cycle run.
There is good evidence for that method, you know.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. It's not the perfect way of doing it, but I really like that way of doing it.
Yeah. There's also, I mean, I'm not saying anything negative about queen producers, but there's also evidence now that people talking about when you requeen, it needs to be a queen that's at least 3 weeks laying in the nuke box it came from before you buy it. And there's so much evidence now, apparently, that unless the queen's pheromone has built before she's removed, you will almost damage the queen or do something that she just doesn't do that well when she's transferred. And I think raising your own queens in your own boxes, if you can, and then or from a cell, and then you leave them in the same place. We need to kind of think more about leaving bees where they are if we can. If you can get a cell and put a cell in, and then they go off and mate, and it's a good cell because it's from a good genetic, you know, so you've got 50% of your stock from behind it going into the daughter before it goes off a mate, and then that stays in the nuke, and then it stays into a hive, and then it produces there. That surely must be better for the bees, for the colony, for your long-term production, longevity of the queen than anything else you can do. I buy queens in, but I do wonder sometimes if they've had a long enough period in the initial box they came from.
Yeah, that is a risk. And I tell you what I like. there's a guy just down the road from me. Well, he's a bit more than down the road, but I've got bees en route to him. Rob Wilson, and I've been picking queens up from him last year.
Yeah.
He caged them in the morning at say 9 o'clock, and they were in my nukes by 10:30.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
You know, and that's the beauty of using, you know, really local queens, because I know what it means, especially with you know, I use a lot of imported queens as well. You know, especially early in the season, they've come from Europe. They've been in transit a few days. Maybe they've been in storage a few days. You know, they sometimes fail a lot. Sometimes they don't. But I think there is a level of stress that goes on those bees that local bees don't get. Or local bees. You know, and like you were saying, the queens you make yourself, they're not caged for days and days at all. You drop a cell in, and I think that's probably the best way of starting the hive is, you know, that queen is born in that hive, and she never has to stop laying.
No, and then the message of where they are never changes. You might change the bees around the box around it, and then give them more space within that box, but they stay where they are. And I think that's a really good way. I'm not talking about being migratory. I think that's something you can do when a colony's up and running. Well, I do buckwheat. I move my colonies, and loads of people around Europe and the world move their bees to the almonds, to the sunflowers, to heather, to, you know, to loads of it. But I think when you've got established colonies, that's a different thing. But when you're making a nuke, if you can get that queen to grow where she is in place, I think that's a really good thing. But it's not always possible, I know, and I'm the biggest guilty person of it. But I do try and do that as much as possible. But
you know, all these queen rearers, if they waited 4 weeks before they sell the queen, they'd all be bust. You know,
they'd only probably get 3 queens through the whole year. They need to get 6 or 8. You know?
I think you're lucky, right, with especially queens from these big importer guys, or, you know, from the big European guys. You know what? You're lucky if they've been in LA in 5 days before they're boxed up, because the turnaround of queens is so fast.
Yeah.
You know, but I've got those queens, and they've survived years, and they produce honey crops. So, you know, I'm not an expert there, but people do tell me that if you don't give the queens a lay-in break, they end up better. That's what people tell me, and you know, they're probably right.
Probably right. Yeah. And then we get that really crazy situation where you make the colony queenless, you cut out the queen cells, you put the queen under a pushing cage, she lays, you lift the pushing cage out, you release her, you come back a week later, they've killed the queen, and they've made eggs, but they made larvae or queen cells with the eggs that she laid.
Yeah, I know.
And you still get those problems. It's like, but that is beekeeping, isn't it?
I've seen it with a pushing cage. You put the queen in the pushing cage, and you think, right, she's safe. And some of my bees have burrowed through the back and then killed her.
Yep. Yeah, I have seen that as well. If they
don't want that queen, they are not taking it.
No. And obviously you can go a long way to alleviating that problem, I think, by choosing your nukes from similar type bees and feeding them, like you said, and all that kind of thing. But it's a tricky thing in it to get right. There's so many constraints, and your staff and your time and where you're going to be, and your queens have arrived yesterday and they're on your table in the kitchen, and you're like, I've got to get these in today, but it's pouring the rain. You know, it's the classic problem, you know.
Yeah.
But we do.
That's one rule I've got. If the nuke kills the queen, just give them a frame of eggs. Don't give them another. You know, that's another 40 quid down the drain if you do.
And I'm sure you've done it as well. You've done it 2 or 3 times, and on the 3rd time you're like, I don't believe they've done it again. But anyway, Griff, we're going to wrap it up there. You've got a life to live, and you haven't got all the night to yap with me. It's been wonderful having you on. Thanks very much for allowing me to have you on as my first guest. It's been great. Thanks for all your little tips and sharing what Gwynedd Griffith Honey does. I'm going to post the link to your shop and everything else after this video goes live on YouTube, so people can see and read the links. Thank you very much for coming.
It's an honor, Rich. You know, glad to be the first guest on your live with your new internet.
Yeah, it's been great, and fingers crossed. I think this is recorded. I think that we will be able to do more lives in the future. I'm not going to tell everyone there's going to be one next week, but there might be. I'm actually going to be away in Ireland myself. I go away a week Tuesday. So if you want to rob this place, there's going to be loads of people here. There is. So I'm not worried about telling you I'm going away, because I've got people coming in while I'm away. But then I'm going to be there for the Ulster Beekeepers Association conference in the 26th, 25th of, the weekend before, when I get to the first weekend. I'll get this right in a minute. I'll be at the Ulster Beekeeping conference. Then I'm going to be flying over to Birmingham, where we're going to be doing, you and I are going to be doing the beekeeping show in the UK. Yeah. Which is going to be fun. I'm doing the morning session. I can tell you who we've got. I've got Ollie Nolan, who's going to be my first guest, and from Ollie's farm. I've got Andy, who is Griff's employee, and then I've got Paul from Apis apodea, and he's going to be talking all about his bees and what he does. So I've got a really good cross-section of experience, and we're going to be asking lots of really good questions and getting people to do what Griff's done, really, and share their experiences and their techniques. And we're going to try and pick out the best of what we can, so that everyone can leave that show with kind of a bit more experience of what real beekeepers do. I'm not being disrespectful to people who've got a few hives, but it is a different level when you're a bee farmer, and it's sharing that effort we put in that is really, really interesting to me. And I love having these lives, and I'm going to enjoy doing them in the future, because it gives, hopefully, a bit of experience to everyone else of what we actually do. And then I learn as well. So we'll just leave it there, otherwise I'll be rabbiting on. But thanks once again, Griff. Been really great to have you on. Really interesting to hear about what you do, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. I will be visiting your honey house quite soon, hopefully in April. So I'm going to do a video with you from there. But
I'll see you in a few weeks in the beekeeper show.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a great season.
Yeah.
Bye for everybody. Take care.